Hi, welcome to Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity, VBS Day 2. Our Bible story today is about Daniel interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the dream of the statue with a head of gold, breastplate of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet and toes, iron mixed with clay. And our Bible verse for today comes from Psalm 46, verse 1, that says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. And our Bible point is that whenever you need help, God is with you. Daniel needed God's help to help him understand what it was that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed and what it meant. Daniel needed that information not only because God wanted Nebuchadnezzar to understand what was going to happen, but for the safety of other people who had been threatened by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had put out the order to have all of his counselors put to death if nobody could tell him what the dream meant. And so Daniel's praying to God and getting the answer from God not only spared Daniel and all those other counselors, but it also gave Nebuchadnezzar the important information that he needed to know. We don't just do these vacation Bible school stories to talk about people who lived many, many thousands of years ago, because they went through troubles and situations where they needed to know what God wanted them to do. And you and I here in the 21st century also need to know what to do when we're going through troubled times, so we can learn from the stories that are in the Bible how to trust God and know that when we need help, God is there for us. So I hope you enjoy today's activities in VBS, and I hope you'll join us again tomorrow for day 3 of Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity. And welcome to Cool Springs for Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity, VBS Day 2. Today, our Bible point is that when you need help, God is with you. And our scripture verse comes from Psalms 46:1, and it says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. And our Bible story comes out of Daniel chapter 2. It's another one of Daniel's adventures, where Nebuchadnezzar, who was the Babylonian king, who had conquered Daniel's country and carried people from Daniel's country to his country and made slaves out of them, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And it was a dream that bothered him very much, and he wanted to know what the dream meant. So he called together all of the people who were his advisors and counselors, and he wanted them to tell him what the dream meant. And they said, well, tell us what your dream is, and we'll tell you what it means. But Nebuchadnezzar was suspicious that people were telling him just what they thought he wanted to hear, so he decided he would put them to the test. He decided that if I can really trust your interpretation of the dream, then you ought to be able to tell me what I dreamed. And so he told the people, no, I'm not going to tell you what the dream is. You tell me what I dreamed, and then I'll trust what you tell me about the dream. And they protested and said, nobody knows what somebody else dreamed. Nobody's ever asked for anything like this before. And Nebuchadnezzar said, nope, I insist. You either tell me what the dream means by telling me what I dreamed first, or I'm going to get rid of all of you. And he threatened them. Well, Daniel and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, now known by their slave names of Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were part of the people who were training to be these counselors. And Nebuchadnezzar was not only going to punish all the grown-ups, he was going to punish the young people who were in training. And so Daniel and his friends prayed to God that God would give them the answer. And God gave Daniel the answer, and Daniel went and told the chief of the servants, take me to King Nebuchadnezzar. I'll tell him what he dreamed and what he meant and what it means, because God has revealed it. So Daniel goes, and I'm going to use our statue here. This is going to be one of our VBS crafts. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar, here's what you dreamed, king. You saw a big statue. You saw a head made out of gold, arms and a breastplate of silver, a belly of bronze, legs that were iron, and feet and toes of iron mixed with clay. And beside it you saw a stone that was cut but not by human hands, and that the stone crushed the statue at its feet, but that the statue crumbled from the top down. Well, as soon as Daniel gave Nebuchadnezzar all those details, Nebuchadnezzar knew he's telling the truth. God must have revealed it to him, and he was able to trust Daniel to give him the interpretation, where Daniel told him, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Your kingdom is the kingdom that's the biggest kingdom in the world right now. But Nebuchadnezzar, there are going to be some other kingdoms that are going to follow after you do, and God is giving you, even though you don't worship God, God is giving you the great honor of knowing how God is working out his plan. It's going to take some time for Daniel and his friends to consistently represent God, to always be honest and tell the truth, to tell Nebuchadnezzar what it is he needs to hear when it's a message from God, whether it's good news like this, or whether later on, when Nebuchadnezzar does some things that he shouldn't do. Like, for example, Daniel tells him that there are going to be other kingdoms to follow. Nebuchadnezzar likes hearing that part, that he's the head of the biggest, best kingdom. But the idea that other kingdoms are going to follow his, he doesn't like hearing that part. So in the next chapter, what he's going to do is he's going to have a statue built out of solid gold, not gold, silver, bronze, and iron, out of solid gold, because he wants to be the focus of everybody's attention. And that'll be something that's displeasing to God. Daniel and his friends, though, are always going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And they didn't know the answer to Nebuchadnezzar's question on their own, but they knew where to go to get help. And that's what's important for you and me to know, is that when we're not sure what to do, when we're not sure what's right and what's wrong, we can pray to God like Daniel and his friends did. And whenever we need help, God will be there for us. Thanks for being here today. Hope to see you tomorrow for day 3 of our Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity. And good morning. Welcome to day number 2 of our Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity VBS. This is Bible Times Bakery and Food, and today our topic is baking. And so what I've got here, and I'll open it up if I can here, and just kind of hold it down where hopefully the camera can see it without me spilling it all over the tablecloth. There is flour in here. Flour is an important ingredient in baking. Flour starts out as grain out in the field, and somebody has to go and harvest the grain and then process it to where it becomes the flour. And there's different kinds of flour. There's all-purpose flour, there's self-rising flour, there's flour specifically for baking bread. There's a product called Better for Bread baking powders. There's all kinds of things that we need to make everything from biscuits to crackers to cakes. And so I've got some samples of bread here that would have been available in the time that Daniel was alive and is available today. We'll start off with this one. This is a piece of matzah. It's called a tam. I'll show you the box here from my local grocery store. It's unleavened bread. So it's baked on a grill, and that's why it has stripes on it, kind of like a hot dog or a hamburger would have stripes on it. But it also has holes pierced in it. When we hold it up to light, you can see the holes pierced in there so that it bakes evenly on both sides, because matzah doesn't have yeast. In biblical times, yeast was always a symbol of sin. For their Passover and for certain other holidays like the Feast of Unleavened Bread, they were not allowed to cook any kind of bread that had yeast in it. So this is an example of a tam. You can buy those in the grocery store. Sometimes it'll look like a little square sheet. Sometimes it looks like a little cracker like that. This is more of a pita-type bread, a flat bread that could be baked. This one is challah. It's spelled C-H-A-L-L-H. You can find this in a lot of bakery sections and grocery stores. You can tell it looks braided because that's how it's baked. This is leavened bread. It has yeast in it. The baker will take 3 strands of dough and roll it out into long strings, and then we'll weave them together in a braid, kind of like some people like to braid their hair. And then we'll wash it down with a brush with egg on it and bake it. And this is the bread that they use for Sabbath days. So Daniel would have eaten both challah type bread and would have eaten the matzah type bread that we've got here on the table, and he also would have eaten some of the pita type bread. They had recipes for cakes and other kinds of things. I'm going to show you a couple things here. This is from a bakery. These are slices of what is my personal favorite kind of cake, lemon cake. My mom, when we were growing up, used to always make sure that on our birthdays, each one of her kids got the cake that was their favorite flavor. My birthday's in July, and my favorite flavor was always the lemon flavor. So our camera operator is the one that brought this in for our cooking demonstration. I don't know if she knew that lemon was my favorite form of cake or not, but it is. One of my brothers liked chocolate cake. One of my brothers liked an applesauce type cake. My dad liked a pineapple upside down. Another brother liked a coconut cake. We all had different things that we liked, and in biblical times, people could bake different kinds of breads. This bread right here, that I'm not going to take out of its wrapper, has raisins in it. Very often, that biblical times people would have raisins or dates or figs or various forms of nuts that grew in the Middle Eastern climate included in their bread, because bread was such an important part of their diet. They didn't use forks and spoons like you and I do. A lot of times they would take a piece of bread, like I'm about to do here, and they would break off a piece and they would dip it into the hummus or the stew or whatever it was that they had, and the bread would actually be the equivalent of their knife, fork, and spoon for them to consume their meal. So Daniel and his friends would have eaten foods like this. But we chose this for day 2 because yesterday in our VBS program, we looked at Daniel chapter 1, where Daniel and his friends were being offered food from the king's table, but the king's food was very rich, very unhealthy. The meat was sacrificed to idols, and it was being served with wine, and they knew that drinking too much wine and drinking anything or eating anything sacrificed to idols would defile their bodies. So they asked for permission to drink only water and be given only vegetables, fruits to eat, and they would have eaten those vegetables and fruits by dipping the bread in them and eating them. And they were healthier than other students in the training program because they were determined to be respectful of the king, be respectful of the authority that was over them, but to respect God even more than the king. And when what God said disagreed with what the king said, they knew our obligation is to serve God first. And if God says no, we can't do it. So I hope you have a chance, if you're watching this online, to try some recipes. We're going to post some on our church's website that people can try. If you're in the local area and you want to come here to Cool Springs July 21st, 22nd, and 23rd for our in-person VBS, we're going to have some of the fruits and snacks and breads and vegetables and cakes that were made using Bible time recipes, and we're going to get to enjoy them live and in person. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. And welcome to day 2 of our Babylon VBS. This is our game and family activities section. Today's activity would be birthday tag. It's a form of freeze tag, but you have one person be it, and you give them some sort of a ball. It could be a Nerf ball, it could be like a dodgeball, something that they just kind of throw up in the air, And when they throw it up in the air, people start running and scattering, and when the ball hits the ground, they have to stop right where they're at. And you ask them based on when their birthday is. Now, if they're closest to where the person who is it is at, they become the new it. It can also be a form of literal freeze tag where you call out January and people start running, but you have to hold up your hand if you're January, and you have to try to avoid being tagged. You play that for a few minutes. For one thing, it lets them burn out some energy. Young people need to have times when they can just let some of that pent-up energy get out. When you've played that several times, now you sit down for a few minutes with them, and whether you're just like sitting around a table or you're sitting on the carport, wherever it is you're doing this at, you talk to them about why did we call out for the calendar this month, the other month, and why did we play freeze tag using the months of the calendar. And you point out to them that the Jews had a calendar, and that the Babylonians had a calendar, and that we have a calendar, and everybody's calendar has months in it, but they don't always call them the same thing. If you've got some students who are school age, you can have them look up on a computer, or you can go as a family to a library, someplace like that, and have the fun of looking up what information you can find about life in ancient Babylon. What kind of foods did they eat? What kind of animals were there? What kind of jobs did people have? And also, how did they have their calendar? And so you can also use that to say, okay, now that we've looked online and we've found out what the Babylonians called the month of April, now we're going to play the game again, but instead of calling out April, we'll call out Aviv. So that if your birthday happens to be in April, you have to know that Aviv equals April, or Tammuz equals July, whatever it is your birthday month compares to, and you play the game again so that they're learning a little bit about other cultures. It's simple, it's easy, it doesn't require anything except access to an encyclopedia or computer to learn some details, and it helps your family just spend some quality time together. See you tomorrow for day 3 of Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity. Thanks for watching.
Hello, boys and girls. We're in day 2 of Vacation Bible School. Our verse today is Psalms 46:1. To the chief musicians, for the sons of Korah, a song upon Almoth. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Daniel chapter 2 is where we're at in the Bible, and Daniel has getting ready to interpret a dream for the king. But you know, Daniel is not in his home country, as we said yesterday. And so one of the things Daniel could do to help himself and realize that God is always with him is look up into the night sky. Because the night sky in Babylon is the same night sky that's back in Jerusalem, where they came from. And so we have some night sky tonight. First of all, I have our solar system displayed with this little model here. Okay, that's our sun in the middle, and then the different planets. That's Saturn, and all of the 9 planets are here. You could get one of these too if you'd like. I also brought a couple other things. You could buy this. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and it lights up, and it puts stars and things on the ceiling in your bedroom. So that's not very, about $8 or so, not hard to get. I also went to Hobby Lobby, and I got some of these nice glasses. These glasses allow you to look at light and see stars, and so that helps out. Also, you can get at Hobby Lobby a little star chart. And you can use this chart and the day and the time and circle it around and look up at the sky and tell which constellation is which. Now, we've also put some other things in this room. We have some constellations on the wall back here and some over there. I also have some fluorescent things. We have this planets and stars hanging from the ceiling, and some of these light up at night. I brought a black light. We have a black light here. We have another black light on the other side of the room, and we're going to turn the lights out and use that black light to kind of show how things might look in a night sky. So let's turn the lights out. And so we have this black light right here. We're bringing it forward. And we can show some of these planets up here and how they illuminate in the night sky. Black light also helps us to see ourselves at night. Look a little different in a black light. Then we have some other fluorescent things over here. I have some fluorescent paint, and it lights up in the night with a black light. It's a violet light. This is a little quinine water. It has illumination qualities. And then I took a magic marker, a green one, a highlighter rather, and dissolved it in water, and it'll light up really nice. Okay, so the point is, Daniel, you turn the lights on now. Daniel could look up into the night sky and see all the same stars that he would see from home.
And good day to you. Welcome to day 2 of our Babylon, Daniel's Courage in Captivity, VBS. This segment is about animals of Babylon, and this particular one, I used a stuffed toy here, either the dog or the wolf. The wolf, of course, is the ancestor of all domesticated dogs, and in fact, some scholars wonder if maybe instead of man domesticating the dog, particularly in Mesopotamia, which is where Babylon is located, that the dogs might have domesticated themselves, because the Babylonians worshipped many different kinds of creatures as though they were gods, the dog being one of them, and dogs were allowed to roam freely through the towns in Babylon. And because they were allowed to roam freely, not only could they help perform some of the duties of cleaning up when some other animal has died by eating the flesh and scattering the bones, but they also were attached to a human being who would take care of them. In fact, in the Babylonian way of looking at things, the dog was called the kalbu. If you want to spell that, that would be Kolbu, the kalbu. That the very first evidence in world history of a dog wearing a collar, this stuffed dog is wearing a ribbon bow tie, but dog collars are shown in Mesopotamian art going back to even before the time of Daniel. There's artwork sketched into buildings and on clay tablets and that sort of thing, showing dogs wearing what would be the equivalent of a dog collar, clearly indicating that by that time they were domesticated and dealing with mankind. There's an important story in our Daniel VBS that involves Nebuchadnezzar, who was a very proud and arrogant king, and he worshipped many gods. And because he was arrogant and proud and didn't listen to when Daniel tried to tell him about the one true God and to worship just the one true God, Nebuchadnezzar, for a time, became very mentally ill, and he's described as having lived out in the wilds like an animal, like a dog, walking around on all fours instead of walking upright like a man would normally walk, and having his hair and his nails grow long and get matted, and eating the dew and the grass of the ground like an animal would do. Some scientists think that what Nebuchadnezzar was suffering from was a disease called lycanthropy, which basically means that your mental illness caused you to act like a wild animal. And for 7 years of his life, Daniel chapter 4 records the fact that Nebuchadnezzar behaved like that until at the end of a 7-year period of time, God restored him to his right mind, and then he realized that everything that Daniel had predicted had come true, and Nebuchadnezzar finally came to a point where he praised the one true God. So each day of our VBS week, we're going to feature one or more animals that would have been native to the area around Babylon, so that we can learn a little bit more about what life was like, because there were these two major rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. There was lots of wildlife in the area of Babylon. We want you to learn about the culture. We want you to time travel with us to what it would be like in ancient Babylon. But we want you to learn mostly about the story of how God cares for people, how God lets us know what the future is because God controls the future, and how even when you're living in a culture that doesn't worship God, that you can stay firm in your faith and continue to worship God and speak up and be courageous in your faith like Daniel was. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Welcome to day 2 of crafts. We're going to be making silly putty. You're going to take 1 tablespoon of all-purpose glue and 1 tablespoon of liquid starch and add it to a bowl. And then you're going to take a couple drops of food coloring. You can use whatever color you prefer. I used red, which when it's mixed with the white glue, it turns pink. You'll just keep mixing until your glue is not sticky. And you can add and take away at this point. And then I take it out of all the liquid mixture and just knead it together. The starch takes the stickiness away, so it helps to get the consistency right. And you're going to just let it sit and dry for 5 minutes and then come back and knead it more. I put them into some airtight containers and made little stickers that say Babylon, Courage, and Captivity. And we're going to use the silly putty to reveal what is written on our cardstock. So I wrote a Bible verse backwards so that when the silly putty picks it up, you'll be able to read it. Today we're learning about how the king needed someone to reveal what the writing on the wall meant. And so I just used pencil and regular black cardstock. I kind of did that so that you couldn't read what was written on the cardstock. And then you just put your silly putty down. And when you lift it up, you should be able to read the message, which is, "For he is the living God and he endures forever." We should explain to our kids that we should read our word so that the word of God will stick to us, just like the words that are picked up from this cardstock stick to the silly putty. I hope you enjoyed VBS, and we hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.